Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another LEGO Lover 117 video. Today's video is my movie review for Journey Beyond Sodor. So last year a little movie called The Great Race came out and I did a movie review for it and I was like, yeah, this movie was pretty good. Not a lot of people liked it, but I liked it and that's what matters because my opinion is the only opinion that matters. But yeah, this movie came out, I did a movie review for it, and then the frickin' unlucky Tug released his review like a week after mine. All of my free views were stolen by that sentient tugboat. So you know what, Unlucky Tug? Don't even think about releasing a Journey Beyond Sodor review this year, because I will murder your entire family. Nah, I'm just kidding, you're alright. Really, that issue's kind of mute now, because Turtles and Thomas released his Journey Beyond Sodor review last week before mine. But his review was nothing but constant nitpicking and complaining. Anyway, Journey Beyond Sodor was a movie that came out a few weeks ago on digital, and I watched it. I'll preface this review by saying that I went in with the lowest expectations possible. And mainly that was due to the reaction of the fandom. Journey Beyond Sodor was announced a little after The Great Race came out. It was kind of leaked, which the same thing kind of happened with The Great Race after Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. And fans were kind of excited for Journey Beyond Sodor. It sounded like a neat concept. You know, Thomas and James get stuck on the mainland and they have to go and save themselves and one of them has to save the other, and it sounded like a pretty interesting concept. And then the trailer for Journey Beyond Sodor dropped and it split the fandom right down the middle. The whole splitting of the fandom pretty much spawned from the fact that the engines now bounce instead of standing completely still like real steam engines do. They kind of, you know, ease from side to side, or like this, or this, or this, or something like that. It's more akin to what the Chuggington engines do, which is nowhere near as bad as Chuggington. I mean, Chuggington like full-on jump off of the rails. I mean, it is ridiculous. If you hated the bouncing, you were a hard ass and you were a Railway Series purist and you would never accept anything other than Audrey's work. And if you liked the bouncing or were just plain in the middle, then you were an Audrey hater, you were a traitor to Audrey's Railway Series history, and you could basically go die in a fire. There really was no middle ground. It was all black and white for everybody, which I personally think is stupid. Naturally, I tried to remain optimistic going into Journey Beyond Sodor, but with each new clip that was being released, the backlash towards it was just larger and larger than the last clip, and my expectations were pretty much killed by the fandom. Not that I blame anybody specifically in the fandom for that. You guys are awesome. I love all of you guys, especially you guys that are my fans. But come on. Did we really need all this backlash towards Journey Beyond Sodor? When the trailer dropped, I uploaded what our Skype calls are like special, where me and a group of Skype friends went and reviewed the trailer, and even that was split right down the middle. Everybody either liked it or they hated it. I mean, there was no middle ground at all. Personally, for me, I didn't even watch the clip with Beresford singing Who's Thomas or the ending bit. And for those of you who are complaining that Mattel put out the entire ending on YouTube of the film, one, it's Thomas the Tank Engine. Did you really think it wouldn't end happily? And two, you didn't have to watch it. But then, like everybody else in the fandom, I saw the movie in full. And I have one quote to sum up my thoughts on it. Don't judge a book by its cover. Don't make your mind up too soon. It's good. Journey Beyond Sodor is good. I'll start off with the positive things and the things I liked about the film, as people usually do. This plot in this movie is actually pretty inventive, and it wasn't something that I was expecting to see. The basic plot summary of Journey Beyond Sodor is Thomas wants to go to the mainland. However, James gets a job going to the mainland, so Thomas steals James's train and goes to the mainland by himself. Now, where exactly have we seen that before? Don't say Misty Island Rescue. We don't talk about that. And plus, Thomas volunteered to go to the mainland in Misty Island Rescue, and he didn't even end up on the mainland. He ended up on frickin' Misty Island. So that doesn't count. And also, don't mention The Great Race. Thomas went to go and save his friend Gordon in that film. There's a completely different reason he went to the mainland in The Great Race. He was going to save Gordon. That was a selfless reason. Journey Beyond Sodor, it's a selfish reason. There's a difference. Sure, it was referenced in the classic series that Thomas wanted to go out and see the world. but when exactly did he ever do it? So actually, major props to the writers for expanding the Thomas and Friends universe with the mainland here. The mainland is pretty freaking cool. I also pretty much love all of the new characters that were introduced here. I was fearful of Theo and Lexi, because going into the film, I had heard that Lexi was going to be some gender fluid engine. She didn't identify as anything, and Theo was like a caricature for autism or something. If that's what the writers were going for, I honestly couldn't tell. Lexi was pretty funny, actually, now that I think about it. And it wasn't just Lexi and Theo. Merlin, Hurricane, Frankie, Beresford. They were all such a breath of fresh air to see. I love me my classic characters, but every once in a while when we get a strong newbie introduced into the series, I'm happy. Favorite new engine here was more than likely Merlin. I know that's the cliche answer, but I just really like Merlin, partly because of his character design. His voice is amazing, and also he's the most optimistic of the experimental engines. Lexi and Theo are both kind of sad by the fact that they can't do anything right. Hell, they have a whole frickin' song based on how they can't do anything right. However, Merlin is so optimistic that he says in that song that he's willing to give anything a try. You know, in this day and age of 2017, when a lot of our media is based on old, grumpy characters that are just broken down, the world has broken them, they're so depressed and sad, it's nice to see an optimistic character in Merlin and how he's just so happy and he's willing to do anything and try anything. Old, broken down, and depressed men. I wonder where we've seen that before. Frankie and Hurricane are also utilized extremely well. They're not your typical Thomas villains. Their whole plan is the fact that they want help at the steelworks. It's way too much for the both of them to handle, but they just don't know how to ask anybody. So they coerce their victims with a song, which is really, really catchy. I mean, it would coerce me to stay there. And they basically keep them in the steelworks for the rest of their life and force them to work. So, in short, the engines are basically slave labor to Hurricane and Frankie. Guys, I just found the inspiration for Journey Beyond Sodor. So, kind of a side note here, I loved when James went to the steelworks and Frankie and Hurricane used the exact same song that they used on Thomas to try to coerce James into staying. I mean, it just makes you think, like, do they sing that song for every new engine that comes in? Hi, yeah, my name's Bob. I was just trying to get to, Bridlington or whatever. Do you guys know where that is? Of course, Bob! Come on in! We'll keep you nice and warm. This is the hottest place in town. Ha 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 ha! And then they just start singing. Seriously though, do you think they did that with every engine that came to the steelworks? I'd just like to see a movie based on that. Just Frankie and Hurricane trying to keep engines around here and trying to do that song on them. But yeah, after seeing Journey Beyond Sodor, I can confidently say that Frankie and Merlin are some of the best villains we've had in Thomas and Friends. And hey, some of the best villains are the ones who think that they're doing good when they're actually doing bad. Now, I'm not saying Frankie and Hurricane are some of the best villains of all time or anything like that, but, they're pretty good by Thomas standards. Speaking of the steelworks earlier, this is a segue, by the way, the steelworks set looks freaking amazing. In fact, most of the animation here looks pretty goddamn amazing. Anything on Sodor or in the steelworks looks amazing, possibly even greater than The Great Race or Season 20. Now, the few shots with Thomas first getting onto the mainland look a little choppy. This scene right here is what I'm referring to. Gee, I had no idea that Mattel was planning on remaking Railway Adventures into a full movie with the exact same graphics card. Am I right? However, I digress. Most of the animation looks pretty good here. And just like The Great Race, Journey Beyond Sodor is actually pretty funny. It had me rolling during a few parts, particularly parts with Merlin being invisible. He's still singing. He's like, I'm invisible. Oh, can't you see? When you can literally see him sitting right there in front of you. And also the bit in the steelworks where Hurricane and Frankie are singing to James and he's like, all right, This is all very entertaining, but where's Thomas? I honestly really love the fact that the writers are kind of playing Thomas more towards a comedic-based show with actually good jokes written in. Because, you know me, I love me some good humor. And I honestly really hope that this humorous take continues into season 21. And now that we have praised Journey Beyond Sodor, as far as the eye can see, it's now time to talk about the negatives. I know this was the entire reason you clicked on this review, was to hear me complain about this movie, because that's what everybody else is doing. There's nothing good, it's all bad. That is a lie. There are a lot of good things, but there are some bad things as well. I'll start off with the music. It's not as good as The Great Races. Now, I don't mean like the instrumentals or the score or anything. This has a very orchestral score. It sounds a lot like Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure score. I actually really like a lot of the instrumental music here. The songs where there are actual lyrics and the engines are singing, that's what I'm referring to whenever I say that the music is not as good as The Great Race. Pretty much I think that the only song that's on par with The Great Race's music was The Hottest Place in Town. That's mainly because it's so catchy. But all the other songs, they don't hold a candle to Will You, Won't You, Streamlining, and Be Who You Are and Go Far. Also, the pacing in this plot gets way out of hand towards the end of the film. After Thomas runs away from the steel works and is able to get back to the experimental engine yard which he was at earlier in the film just kind of stops. Literally, pretty much nothing happens except for Theo and Lexi get to sing a song about how sad they are, that they can't do anything. And it's kind of a pointless scene, if I'm going to be honest. It doesn't really add anything to the plot, other than to get Theo, Lexi, and Merlin to help Thomas save James. And even at that, there's a scene after that where Thomas runs into Beresford again, and that's when Thomas actually finds out that James is getting kidnapped by Frankie and Hurricane. That's really when they convince Lexi and Theo to help out, because Merlin's already convinced. He wants to help Thomas get back to Sodor. That whole second scene in the experimental engine yard, and also that song, just completely pointless in my opinion. I really like those characters, but the writers could have integrated them better into the story rather than just having the movie stop completely to explain why these experimental engines exist. The climax of this film is my favorite part. It's this big chase scene inside of the steelworks where Frankie and Hurricane are chasing Thomas, James, Merlin, Theo, and Lexi around the steelworks. They're trying to stop them from escaping, and it's a really fast-paced and really well-executed scene. However, after that chase ends, the movie just kind of falls apart. Once Hurricane's wheels start melting in that molten slag, and Frankie starts crying, the whole movie just derails. Pun absolutely intended. Yes, it is Thomas the Tank Engine. We can't have Hurricane melt on screen and have all the kiddies at home start crying because they saw Hurricane melt and Frankie get taken off to train jail, but this ending could have been so much better. Legend of the Lost Treasure took a giant risk with having Sailor John not turn good at the end and actually getting comeuppance for what he did. He gets arrested. He gets taken to prison. When exactly could we say that any other Thomas villain actually got comeuppance for what they did? And don't say Diesel 10 in Magic Railroad, or even Diesel 10 in Day of the Frickin' Diesels, because Diesel 10 just kind of got scolded in that movie. But here, everyone is just magically friends at the end. Everybody just forgets that Frankie and Hurricane basically enslaved Thomas and were going to enslave James as well. They just kind of forget, and the experimental engines stay at the steelworks. They're not concerned by the fact that maybe these engines are dangerous because they basically kept Thomas and James there forever, or were going to. It's such a rushed and stupid ending. I do not like the ending of this film at all. And again, Hurricane and Frankie, they aren't given any sort of comeuppance for what they did to Thomas and James. They're just given 3 new workers to help them out. In fact, the entire ending song is about the importance of just being friends. It's such a politically correct ending where everybody is happy, nothing is bad in the world, it's all sunshine and rainbows. Aww. I understand that yes, this is Thomas the Tank Engine, but at the same time though, the writers have taken risks in the past with Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. Why couldn't that happen here? Now to be fair and give credit where credit's due, the ending song is really catchy. The lyrics, I do not like the lyrics at all. Its beat and actual music is pretty daggone catchy, but I don't like the lyrics. I don't like the message that it sends to kids. Those were my negatives with the film. So now we're moving into the middle section. The stuff that I was neither okay with or completely hated. You all know about the bouncing. I mentioned it earlier and I'm sure you all are wondering, what does Uncle Lego Lover think about the bouncing? What are his opinions on the bouncing? Said it previously. I neither like nor dislike the bouncing. Do I prefer to have it not be there? Yes. But does it bother me that it is there? No. Is it kind of overused? Yeah. But is it the horrible and tragic death of Thomas and Friends as we know it? No. Not at all. The bouncing does not detract from the amazing storytelling, strong new characters, and entertaining humor. If you dislike Journey Beyond Sodor because of the bouncing alone, I can't understand how you can just overlook everything that's good about this film and be stuck on just the bouncing. I understand that Thomas and Friends was meant to be a realistic show for kids. They were based on real stories with anthropomorphized engines with faces so that kids could connect with the engines more and actually enjoy the Reverend's stories. However, I cannot understand how some people can just overlook the great storytelling, strong new cast of characters, and just the entertaining vibe from Journey Beyond Sodor because they don't like the bouncing. I don't understand that, and I never will. It also kind of makes me think of Iron Man 3 in a way. The fact that Mandarin was changed to be an actor in this film, and he wasn't actually a terrorist, that rubbed people the wrong way. I would honestly say I would probably give Journey Beyond Sodor an 8.5 out of 10. The same grade I gave The Great Race. However, Journey Beyond Sodor is an improvement over The Great Race. And I think that my rating for The Great Race has kind of dropped down to an 8. I think I got caught up in a little too much of the hype for The Great Race last year. Great Race is still a good film. However, its rating has dropped just a little bit. I still really like The Great Race, however. But there are problems with it, just like Journey Beyond Sodor. Journey Beyond Sodor clocks in at number 3 on my new specials list. I can't say ARC specials anymore because ARC is gone, rest in peace. Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure still stands tall at number 1. The Adventure Begins at number 2. The Journey Beyond Sodor at number 3. The Great Race at number 4. King of the Railway at number 5. And coming in dead last is Tale of the Brave. I don't like Tale of the Brave. It's boring to me. It's not entertaining. You guys can rage at me in the comments if you want, but I just don't care for it. So that was my review for Journey Beyond Sodor. Was it better than I expected it to be? Yes, it was. Will there be people months from now who liked this special suddenly turn on it because it's cool to hate new things? You bet your ass there will be. And will there be people decades from now still complaining about the bouncing and how they will never like Thomas because the engines bounce? Yes, there will be. I want to thank y'all for watching, and as always, good night everybody.